Welcome back to Mastering Wisconsin Plumbing, the podcast that turns confusion into clarity when it comes to Wisconsin plumbing code. Whether you're an apprentice, journeyman, master plumber, or inspector, or just someone who loves talking pipe, we're here to walk through SPS 381 to 387, one topic at a time, and give some real-world insight and no-nonsense breakdowns. I'm your host, Ryan Boggs, licensed master plumber, instructor, and passionate advocate for elevating our trade. Today's episode, we're digging into DSPS Plumbing FAQs. Not the rumors, not the hearsay, but the actual guidance the state gives us to clarify the code. We'll take a dive through indirect waste, materials, inspections, emergency fixtures, cross-connection control, and some important distinctions between what's in the plumbing code versus what's in the building code. So first off, let's get something clear right away. The FAQ is a tool, not the rule book. It's based on real questions submitted to the Department of Safety and Professional Services, and it helps explain how DSPS interprets the code. That said, it's not the law. The actual enforceable rules live in SPS 381 through 387. Now let's talk about what happens when you go digging around DSPS website. You click a link to find more info about backflow, indirect waste, or testing procedures, and you land on a broken link or blank page. Yeah, I've been there too. Don't get frustrated. DSPS seems overtasked lately, and honestly, the code we follow here in Wisconsin has, in my opinion, drifted from the clarity and strength it once had. There was a time when our plumbing code had a national reputation for being comprehensive and trade-person driven. I still believe it can return to that, and hopefully someday soon we'll see a code requirement that only licensed plumbers, engineers, and inspectors have a voice in writing and revising the plumbing code. Until then, we use what we have, and we help each other understand it. Let's jump into indirect waste piping, one of the most misunderstood areas of the plumbing code, and one where people get caught on inspections all the time. Here's what the DSPS FAQ and SPS 382.33.7 tells us. What is the required air gap separation distance? The answer? For indirect waste pipes 1 inch or less in diameter, the required air gap is twice the diameter of the pipe. For pipes over 1 inch, the minimum air gap is 2 inches. So if you're running a 3/4 inch ice machine drain or condensate line to a floor sink, you need an air gap of at least 1.5 inches between the pipe and the receptor flood level rim. If it's 1.5 inch pipe, bump that air gap up to 2 inches minimum. And here's the key. This isn't just a design suggestion. This is straight from code and enforced on job sites. I've seen entire punch lists held up over missing or incorrect air gaps. Now let's layer in another common question. How do you size a local waste line serving a T&P relief valve? Well, the answer is you size the local waste based on the receptor's DFU value. You don't size it off the T&P pipe directly. You go to Table 1 and 382.30 and use the receptor's drainage fixture unit value, so the DFUs of that receptor, value to pick the right size pipe. This is a subtle point, but one that's really important when designing discharge piping for safety valves or multiple pieces of equipment dumping into a single receptor. And while we're here, let's talk about something you'll see all the time on installations: water heater pans. A lot of plumbers will run the T&P relief line and the pan drain into the same 3/4 or 1 inch line, which sounds efficient but creates a code conflict. Here's why. The minimum diameter for a sanitary drain in Wisconsin is 1.25 inches. So if you pipe the T&P valve to discharge to that water heater pan, that discharge from that water heater pan has to be a minimum of 1.25 inches to be code compliant. So what's the fix? Option 1, discharge the T&P line to the floor or directly to an approved receptor with proper air gap. Or option 2, pipe the drain pan separately, not into the sanitary drain, maybe to the exterior if you're allowed, or to a floor drain nearby, again observing air gap rules. To play it safe, and one of the most code compliant ways is just to run those lines separately at their designated discharge points, ensuring that one doesn't go into the other. Next up, emergency fixtures. Are emergency fixtures, eye wash stations, showers required by our code? Nope. Not according to SPS 381 to 387. That requirement lives in the building code or in occupational health and regulations like OSHA and ANSI standard. But here's the catch. When we do install them, we are responsible for meeting the plumbing code's requirements for temperature, pressure, and proper waste disposal. The FAQ actually brings up temperature. If tempered water is supposed to be supplied to these showers and eye wash stations, they're not. That's also an OSHA requirement. But if we do, we have to maintain the proper GPM, the proper pressure, and the proper volume of tempered water to that unit. Now let's talk materials. The DSPS FAQ on materials gives some really practical guidance, but also includes entries that are a little dated. So as always, use the FAQ to steer your thinking, but confirm it is in 384 if there's any doubt. Here's a great example. On the FAQs, they have a question: can air admittance valves be installed to serve chemical waste systems? No, according to the FAQ number 151, if you're using chemical resistant piping to serve a fixture, you may not use an air admittance valve as the vent termination. Now this specific entry is a bit old. It dates back to 2005, but here's the key. Even though some parts of the venting code have changed, this restriction still applies. Chemical systems, especially in labs or industrial spaces, produce off-gassing that can corrode AAVs or compromise their ability to close and seal correctly. So if you're in a science wing or manufacturing facility, hard pipe it, hard vent. Don't try to sneak in an AAV to avoid a tough vent route. It's a code fail waiting to happen. And that's not the only restriction you'll find on AAVs. You can't use them to relieve positive pressure. They're only to relieve the vent or relieve the negative pressure inside of a vent system. There's also a bunch of whole other code requirements outlining AAVs, and they're now in the code as of November 2024, or the latest code update. So the lesson here is know what they're approved for, or don't over-rely on them just because it's convenient. And speaking of convenience, just because material is on the shelf at the supply house doesn't mean it's approved in Wisconsin plumbing. PVC, CPVC, ABS all have to meet specific ASTM standards outlined in 384.30 and 384.40. All that piping must be listed and labeled by a recognized standard organization according to our Wisconsin Plumbing Code. No label, no approval, no exceptions. So next time you're ordering pipe or reviewing shop drawings, slow down, check that listing. It's not just code, it's protection for you, your license, and your liability. Now let's get into one of the most important and right now the most confusing parts of the plumbing code: cross-connection control. This area that's causing the most concern coming out of the latest code update. There's a lot of uncertainty about what's enforceable, what needs to be replaced, and what legacy systems are still allowed. Let's start with some clarity from DSPS FAQs. So FAQ number 40 asks, may a cross-connection control assembly remain in service if it was code compliant when installed, but it isn't anymore? The answer, yes. It can stay in service as long as it's functioning properly and hasn't been replaced. But if the assembly fails, or if you remove it for replacement, that's when current code applies. You don't get to reinstall something outdated. This comes up a lot with RPZs and older dual checks. If it's still working and hasn't been pulled, you're okay. But if it comes out of the system, it's got to be brought up to the current standards. Here's another one that I've heard come up a few times. When does cross-connection control need to be brought up to current code during remodel or repair? Here's the breakdown. If you have to cut the piping to remove or work on the assembly, then you've triggered a code upgrade. If you have a union or a flange, you can remove the device without cutting, then it can go back in, provided it still functions and was compliant when installed. This seems minor, but it's huge. The difference between cutting and unthreading can be thousands of dollars and several inspection layers. Now here's where things get real. This whole area, cross-connection control, is one of the biggest messes in this new code cycle. A lot of us in the field were caught off guard by how incomplete and inconsistent this new language is, and that's why for now the direction from DSPS has been to use the old cross-connection control chart, the one from the last code cycle, until these issues get sorted out. So if you're wondering what to do on a job tomorrow, go by the old chart. If you're unsure, email your plan reviewer or inspector. You can also email DSPS. They'll confirm that's the working guidance until DSPS can revise and clarify the language. Which brings me to something I should remind all of you. Let's get involved with the Plumbing Code Advisory Committee. Whether you're a licensed plumber, inspector, engineer, or instructor, your voice matters. We need people involved shaping code who understand what it means to provide safe, functional, long-lasting plumbing systems. We can't afford to be silent and then complain later. Join the committee, read the minutes, show up when they ask for public comment. Because bad plumbing code isn't just confusing, it's a safety risk. In our segment last week, we spoke about definitions, and yes, there is an FAQ for definitions. It's a gold mine for clearing up confusion in terms like clear water waste, private on-site wastewater treatment systems, fixture unit. So knowing the exact code definition can make the difference between a passed plan and a rejected one. Don't guess, look it up in 381. You can also go to the FAQ. So the final and maybe most important takeaway: just because something is required doesn't mean it's required by plumbing code. Emergency fixtures, drinking fountains, public restroom configurations, these come from the building code or ADA. So as plumbers, we're not always in control of what goes into a building, but when it's on the plans, it's our job to make sure it's installed code compliant and inspected properly. That is why knowing what is in and isn't in our code matters. It keeps you from arguing with the wrong point or installing something incorrectly because you trusted a spec without verification. One of the most relatable stories I can think of, I think it used to be a requirement for public bathrooms to have a floor drain in our plumbing code. Plumbing code is pretty specific on where it's supposed to have floor drains or where they're required, and public bathrooms does not have it. That actually falls under building code. They require floor drains in public bathrooms. So that wraps up episode 3 of Mastering Wisconsin Plumbing. We took a real look at the DSPS FAQs, what they clarify, where they fall short, and how to read between the lines of code, guidance, and enforcement. So remember, when you hit a broken link or can't find that PDF you're looking for on DSPS site, don't get mad, just get resourceful. We're in a transitional time with our code, and I truly believe the future is brighter when licensed professionals, plumbers, engineers, and inspectors are the ones shaping it. Next week, we'll dive into one of the most misunderstood areas of the Wisconsin Code, approved venting systems. So this covers other type of wet vents, circuit vents, relief vents. We'll break it all down with code references and field examples. So until then, stay sharp, stay safe, and stay code strong.